I have a book in my office called The Hard Sayings of Jesus. I don't know why that one is not in it. It's one of the most radical things he ever said. A couple years ago, I read an article about the children of anonymous dads. These are children born through artificial means to parents, whether mother or father or both, that have chosen to remain anonymous. The law does not require donors to identify, and so many don't. And just so we all know, we're not talking a handful of people. The latest estimate was that between 20 and 60,000 such children are born every year. So if you multiply this by the number of years we have had that ability, we're talking in the millions of children. When they reach out for their parents, as almost all of them want to do, some of them, most of them, find that their parents do not want to be found. One such child conceived through a donor, now in his 30s, reached out to his father. He got no reply. And so he kept trying. And finally, his father wrote back, "I most probably participated in giving you life, but I should not have to be put through this discomfort because of that act of kind service. Good night and good life." He was devastated. In fact, the children who seek their biological parents only to be shunned by them are more than twice as likely to struggle with substance abuse or to get in trouble with the law before they're 25. They are 1.5 times more likely to report depression or mental illness. They say that their donor is half of them, but they've never met them. And so as a result, they report feeling like they never belong, unwanted, stray, alienated. One of them said, "It's like there's a doll manufacturer that is making hundreds of dolls, and you just happen to be one of them." What they want is belonging, participation, responsibility, protection, loyalty, ownership. But tens of thousands spend their entire lives in between relationships. When I read this article for the first time, I was in the middle of studying for Slave to Child, which is one of the soul shifts in College Church. In Slave to Child, we talk about a Christian's origins and their identity. And you guys, it rattled me because I started to wonder if in this age of mass evangelism, of plans that lead someone to Christ, if our trouble is not that we have failed, but that we have succeeded. And one unintended consequence of that is that there could be thousands of people that are Christians but they feel like they're the spiritual children of anonymous parents, like they don't fit and they don't belong. And so they spend the rest of their Christian lives looking for a sense of belonging. Can I just have a pastoral moment with you? I think some of you are here. And what I found is that it doesn't matter how long you've been a Christian, and it doesn't matter how educated you are. You'd be surprised what an education doesn't fix. This is a systemic need in the people of God today. And we don't even know who each other are when it comes to this need. I have a word for you. You are not an accident, spiritually speaking. You are the result of a union between a father who is God, a mother who is the church, and they made decisions about you long before you decided anything. And so whether you know this or not, and even whether you feel this or not, you are the result of love and intention. You are here because somebody wants you to be here. You are tempted to think in an individualistic or American culture that you decided to follow Jesus. You decided nothing until others, some human and some divine, made decisions about you. You are tempted to think that if you had Christian parents who did everything they should do, that your faith is the result of being raised in a Christian home, even as I was. But the fact of the matter is, your parents, good as they were, are only midwives helping God deliver the person he wants born. Because that which is flesh, no matter how good they are, cannot give birth to that which is spiritual. Not because something is wrong with those people, it's just beyond them to do that. And so you are the result of love. Oh, I want you to feel that. For a moment, take a step back and don't look at all of the details in the Christian story. Look at the whole story. Church, look at stuff that you already know is true, but maybe you've never put it together like this before. The entire salvation narrative is cast in the Bible from cover to cover as a family. When you recite the creed, you say, I believe in God the Father, creator of heaven and earth. He is a father before he's even a creator. In the Old Testament, Israel is called the son of God. Yahweh says to Pharaoh, you took my son, my only son. Now I will come and get yours. The covenant in the Old Testament is always transmitted along patriarchal lines in the father of the family, and it goes from generation to generation. It is not a collection of misfits. There is a lineage throughout the Old Testament. In the prophets, the relationship between God and his people is like unto that of a husband and a wife. Therefore, when the prophets speak of idolatry, they speak of adultery because it's the breaking of a vow of marriage. Israel's problem, says the prophets, is that she is having relationships with other religions or other spouses, and she has not been able to create the offspring that Yahweh wants. This is why Isaiah says in chapter 26 of his nation, Israel, we writhed in pain like a woman in labor, but we gave birth to wind. We have not brought salvation to the earth. He says, we have not given life to the children of the world. Do you hear the language in this? It's a rich imagery, not of a king and a slave. It's the imagery of a father with a family who has children, most of whom don't know they belong. In the New Testament, Jesus comes around, and it's almost like, for want of a better word, it's like Jesus is collecting orphans, strays, street kids. And he's doing more than just forgiving them. He's reconnecting them to their lineage, to the woman who was crippled for 18 years. He says to the Pharisees who want it done a certain way, why should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, be freed from the chains that Satan has kept her in? To Zacchaeus, who has climbed a tree and wants to see him, despised as a tax collector, Jesus says, today salvation has come to your house, for this man too is a son of Abraham. Do you hear what Jesus is doing? He's not just forgiving people. He's not just liberating them from Satan. He's also reconnecting them to their spiritual ancestry by saying, you are a child with lineage that goes back to Abraham. Are you there? Sometimes when preachers preach, you think, well, they just making this up because they need a sermon. This is all over the New Testament. You hang on. So in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus will say it again. Jesus is apparently inside of a house, and there is a large crowd in the house. And his mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to him. Luke adds they wanted to see him, but they couldn't get through the crowds. And so Mark says they sent somebody in to speak to Jesus and say to him, your mother and brothers are outside and they want to speak to you. And Jesus says, I mean, you try this when your mother wants to speak to you. See how that goes for you. Who then is my mother and my brothers? And then, gesturing to the disciples around him. Only Mark says it wasn't the disciples, it was a circle of people from the crowd. So Jesus sitting there in a room talking, and they say your parents and your brothers are outside. Jesus is gesturing now to the people from the crowd that is around him. And then he says, these are my mother and my brothers and my sister. For anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my mother, my brother, and my sister. I don't think we can understand this unless we understand it spatially. What is happening is all three writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are creating spaces subliminally. There are those people who are inside the house with Jesus, and then there are those people who are outside of the house who want to see Jesus. All three Gospels point this out. They were standing outside, and then when they sent someone, they said, your parents are outside wanting to see you. And what Jesus is doing is redrawing the lines around true family. To the mother and the brothers, the line is between the family and the crowd. So it don't matter where you're at. If you got a crowd, you got a family. Son, it's time for you to pull off from the crowd and spend time with your family. But in Jesus's mind, the line is between those who obey the will of the Father and those who do not. Do you see what he's done to the family? He's just moved it. So in Jesus's mind, he's already with his family. And the other ones are outside. So the family you thought you had is outside, but your real family is inside. Your other family wants to speak with you, but your real family already is. You see why this is one of the most radical things he could say? It strikes Americans today in one of two ways. It is either the best news you've ever heard because you don't have a good, strong family. Maybe you did, but something happened to it, and you can't get it again. And you feel a little bit like one of the people Jesus runs through and reconnects. But if you have a strong family, and I know many of you do, this is shocking news. Jesus is saying your family is not who you think they are. Your family is those who do the will of my Father in heaven. Now, there's two ways for you to miss this. One of you is to say, well, all right, yeah, I hear what he's saying. I think what he means is that's my other family. I have this one, but then there's another one. Well, maybe he meant what he said. Keep reading. To the crowd in Luke chapter 14, with the crowd in front of him, he said, nobody who does not deny their mother, father, children, brothers, and sisters could become my disciple. So it doesn't sound there like he's adding a family. It sounds like he's replacing a family. When he has the disciples alone in Matthew chapter 10, he says, don't think I came to bring peace. I came to bring division. I came to separate, to turn a man against his father and a mother against her daughters. And one's own foes will be from one's own household. Do you see what Jesus is saying? And do you see why as Americans we have to sort of whittle this down before we can step into it? We can't just let him talk. He's saying there's not another family. He's saying we were wrong about family. The family are those who do and obey the will of God. No wonder when his parents came looking for him at 12, he said, I had to be about my Father's business. No wonder when the would-be disciple in Luke chapter 9 said, let me go bury my father, he said, let the dead have their own funeral. You say, what? You come and follow me, defying the deepest obligations of Jewish culture. No wonder when he called James and John, Matthew says, they left their boats, and their father, and followed him. No wonder when dying on the cross, he would say to Mary, behold your son, and gesture at John, and then say to John, behold your mother. You see what he is doing, church? It's quiet. Do you see what he is doing? He is forming new ties called family around the people of God. This is all the way through the New Testament. It's there, and you already know this, but you might have missed it. Whether you knew this or not, when you were saved, you were born again, not of a husband's will or passion. You were born of God. John chapter 1, 12 and 13, because that which is flesh must give birth to flesh, and that which is spirit, only spirit is capable of giving birth to spirit. You are the child of the Spirit of God. Therefore, with this Spirit, you call God things no other religion would call him. You call him Daddy. Abba, Father. Romans chapter 8. This means that you are the children of God. With one Father, Ephesians chapter 4, who is above us all, in us all, and living through us all. And this means that you are not just neighbors, you are brothers and sisters. 82 times in Paul's letters alone. 82 times he calls us not saints, he calls us family. Oh, do you see why? If you miss this central teaching, you have missed part of the core of the Christian faith. You have anonymous parents whom you've not met, who want to meet you. Why is this so important? Well, I think it's important because our culture today is crying for family. On the one side, millions of people are looking to Ancestry.com, 23andMe, because they're trying to find some kind of a link to ancestors. They want groundedness. Where do I belong? Where do I fit? Who wants me? Who will miss me? Who's responsible for me? Who thinks about me when I'm not in the room? On the other hand, our culture today is going through vast redefinitions of the family. We want it to be anything, literally anything. And I think sometimes the Christian church, we get critical of this. We feel like we have to defend the traditional nuclear family, and because so much is on the line. But can I just ask you for a moment to kick it up a little higher? Can we stop being so defensive and look into the heart of a nation at what they really want? They want longing, they want a belonging, they want a loyalty, they want protection, they want ownership, they want a fit. And think to yourself, even though we are not this yet, could you just imagine how powerful a church would be if it was not just a gathering of people who happened to be at the same place at the same time. Brother, that's called an elevator. You get on it on your way up and have conversation. Can you imagine if the church could move from being a Planet Fitness, where individuals came to work on their spiritual lives? The programs are the apparatus. The staff are the coaches. But the purpose of the church, for some, is to help me work out my spiritual life. What if it was more than this? What if it was more than a social platform where people came to make friends, find partners, find voters, find employees, find babysitters? And what if it was more? Nothing wrong with any of those things. Nothing wrong with Planet Fitness, nothing wrong with nothing wrong at all, because it does serve to some extent in that way, doesn't it? But what if it was more? What if the church that Jesus and Paul created was a large, extended family that lived in multiple dwellings on the same land, under the authority of one Father, with Jesus as a brother? Wow. There are first steps to every massive change. The first one here, I think, is if you're already coming, and you are, you're here, belong. You don't attend your family. You belong to your family. Next Thanksgiving, when the father and the mother are at the table, try walking in and saying, I've decided to attend this table today. See how that goes for you. Call me from the garage where you're living. You don't attend, you don't come to a family, you belong to a family. So join it. Participate, take ownership. Don't just criticize what you wouldn't do. Think of what you would do if you were in charge, and start doing that in whatever circle you already have influence. And when you do it, take full ownership. Don't pass it on. Well, it wasn't my decision. Join the discussions. Speak into them. Share your thoughts. Sometimes you will win, sometimes you will lose. But you never walk away. You can argue with us, dialogue with us, even fight with us, but stay with us if you are family. Belong. Are you tracking? Second, if you're used to volunteering, quit it. Serve. You don't volunteer for a family. Man, when you go home today and your wife says, I think I need this done, you don't say, well, I'm busy. But yeah, I think maybe I'll volunteer, but I can only give it, you won't even finish. And she'll be saying, honey, you don't live here. This is your home. So you make plans to serve the family that has served you. Would she not say that? Yes? Well, this is exactly the term. When you volunteer, it's oriented around, well, what are my passions? Well, honey, I'm not passionate today about or I only have so much that I can When you belong to a family, you look around to see what the family needs, and whether or not they have offered opportunity, you step in to fill the need. Are you there? I was supposed to be on the platform because my notes are up here. You get one of these things here. On the back of this thing, right here, there's are these called QR codes? In fact, there's about 10 of these QR codes on these things. Sheesh, my goodness. I feel like the mark of the beast or something here. They're pulling on my forehead. Scan me attendance. Now I'm making this up. I'm just playing with you. On the back of this thing, there's one called Serving Together with one of those QR codes. Pull your phone out, not now. But scan that thing. It'll take you to a website, and it will link you to some of the things that are happening in the family. And you're like, well, I don't think I know what I want to do. Perfect. I thought you'd say that. There's also a place where you just go, you know what? God is telling me today I need to belong. I don't need to volunteer. I need to serve the body, the family that's been serving me. Just click that thing, and one of the staff will give you a call. I know this because he told me. So really, this is a big thing. And right here, this is where you fish or cut bait, right here. This is where you stop going, oh, that's a fine sermon, and actually do it. Third, stop inviting people. Start including them. You don't invite people over to your family. You adopt them. You have an ownership before they do. You let them sit with you, eat with you, play different things with you. You let them belong to you. Can you see how taking Jesus and Paul seriously, even for a moment, raises the stakes on what most churches / nonprofit organizations are calling for? They're looking for attenders, donors, volunteers, and crowds. And we're not. We're looking for family who belongs, serves, includes. If you're one that feel, I still don't connect, I feel like this church or these people have hurt me, first, on behalf of the congregation, on behalf of myself, please accept our apology. I don't expect you to believe this, but it's true. There's not a week that goes by I don't live with regret or frustration at the people I've disappointed because I could not meet their expectations. And I know that's true. I know it's true for several people in this room right now. Please be gracious to us. We're trying. This sermon is aspirational for us. Finally, church, there's the table. Somebody once surveyed the nation to find out what are the words they want to hear more than any other words. You know what? Most of them said, supper's ready. Because that means there's enough for everybody. Everybody gets to eat. And you are welcome at our supper.